again, I want to thank you, everyone, for coming to our office here at New York. We're so happy to have you all of you with us today. Very excited. Once again, we're so excited to work with Women in Sustainable Finance. This is the second time we're working together. So very glad for that. We are especially glad that we see so many of you today to discuss this very important topic of sustainability in the era of digital transformation. As we all know today, the world is becoming more and more digital, and the advances we are witnessing in technology are profoundly transforming the way we address global challenges. For us at Blue Orchard, the digital revolution offers the opportunity to have a powerful tool for advancing financial inclusion, fostering climate adaptation and resilience, as well as mitigating potential risks. So it is very important for us to have this discussion and to bring together some experts in the topic and have this interesting and insightful conversation about how technology and data-driven solutions are shaping the landscape of impact investing as well as energy transition. While we embrace this myriad of opportunities, it's also very important to discuss the risk that this might also occur for our world. So I think it's very interesting the discussion that is going to be happening, and I think it's also going to tackle different points. So I'm very excited for it. And I'm not going to make a much longer welcome. I'm just going to leave. Maybe Martha has some keywords she would like to share. But again, thank you so much for coming. And I hope we will all enjoy this discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you. If I may ask you to click the next slide. We forgot our clicker. So also warm welcome from my side, and thank you very much. Is it good with the sound?
Yeah.
So also thank you very much, Cecily, for hosting Women in Sustainable Finance here today. There are a lot of new faces that I see today. So my name is Marta. I'm one of the co-founders of Women in Sustainable Finance. And today we are here on the invite of Cecile and Blue Orchard for this co-event. We have a very distinguished lineup of experts here today. And I'm very thankful, together with Cecile, that you were able to catch their valuable time in order to come here and discuss with us the topics that Cecile just mentioned. So I would like to welcome, next slide please, our distinguished speakers. Panagiota. I don't dare the second one. Please come to the stage. I'm going to just say now the first names, Eric, Veronica, and Garrett. Please. Maybe a round of applause. So I did check the exercise to speak out very correctly, but you will not correct me, I'm sure. Before we start, I will ask the panelists to introduce themselves and also to share with us what their passion is during the day, and maybe also in private, because we have a lot of people in our network whose life is a method between private and professional. So who are you? And please, if you can speak out your first and your last name for us before more time, so we don't say it correctly. And then, and we have to, Eric has a cable, and you two would have to share the microphone, please. Thank you. So, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear me? Good enough. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. Blue Orchard and Women Finance from Integration. My name is Palagiota Babuska. I'm the lead in function and strategist and developer with the Devil Impact Investing Network. And I'm also director for the Iris Plus IMAC team. Currently, my passion is also my work. I'm very passionate about investing. I think it's a great opportunity to frankly work on what I have learned as a student and across many years, also towards hopefully achieving better outcomes for, like here? Yes. Excellent. Thank you. For the broader society. So I'm excited to be here today. I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you. Bye. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric.
So I'm one of the co-founders of Yoba Impact Investing. You might have heard of us before. We're digital platforms for impact investing. And my role is Chief Growth Officer. That means I'm responsible for marketing, sales, partnerships, and service. I used to be a bit more on the technical side. So for the first 5 or 6 years, I was CTO, CPO, so Chief Tech Officer. And then I transitioned to the dark side with like instead. So now I'm working on the growth side. Yeah. My passion is definitely my job. I love what I'm doing. It takes a fair bit of my time. To balance out, I like to meditate. It's one of my big hobbies, so I invest a lot of time. And otherwise, I also love doing sports. Very good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Veronica. Yeah. Now is that? Yeah. Yes. Let's hold it and more close and up.
Thank
you. Sure. You need to train. So Veronica, just thank you so much for having me here. I'm the head of impact management at Warshats. Warshats, we are for almost 25 years fully dedicated to investments in the impact space. So clearly, I've been working for the company for 17 years. Most of this time on the investment side, so traveling, it are the steps that you support and fund and following as well, the path on how so many of these organizations have grown. And also eventually to new topics that maybe related to my passion as well. I am Peruvian, so very committed to what drives development, how can we support growth in emerging countries. And we started in Portugal with very much focus on management inclusion, but also now into very new topics. So we are much more engaged in climate finance, nature-based solutions, etc. And personally, we're dog lover as well, and I love nature, so hikes and what's in nature is really what feels like that.
Great. Hi everyone, my name is Gerard. I always say I was banker, then I turned entrepreneur, now I don't about profits. So among that, two mainnets, just me one. So my day job is the foundation called Green Finance Alliance, which works at the intersection of digital tech, finance, and nature, especially around sustainable cities, and ocean or blue economy. And then the second app is the co-founder of the Green Fintech Network, which is a really stakeholder association working on establishing an ecosystem that brings more innovation out in Switzerland that's helping the green transition of the financial sector. And then since last week or the week before, I forget, I also joined the board of the Geneva-based network called Climate Bridges, which is also very much focused on female climate leadership. So therefore, it's happy to be here on the sustainable finance female nexus. And personal passion, at the moment, I do these jobs. There's little time for sports, unfortunately, but I like to do that. And then the hobby passions and 3.5 years, so that also we didn't meet sometimes.
Great. Thank you very much for your very lovely introduction. It's always nice to hear actually from the panelists themselves what drives them and what their passion are. Really heard twice that private life is melted with the profession. So I would like to raise my perspective to Eric actually as also coming from the financial industry, from a sustainability bank like yourself. How can digitization really drive sustainability? How can it be enabled? How was it for you?
Mm-hmm.
And what are other examples that you could share with us?
Mm-hmm. So I think generally, when I think about digitization, it's just a tool, right? And new technology is another tool for what you want to do with it. And what I think digitization generally does the most is making things accessible, information accessible to people that want access to that information. Maybe you didn't know about it before. Maybe you weren't even aware that certain things exist. And all of a sudden with digital technology, on the one side, apps, websites, and also through digital channels, you can reach people that maybe weren't aware of a certain need they had. And that's what we did with the Yoba. So we're an impact investing platform that try to make impact investing as successful as possible. That means, first of all, of course, the obvious things, low investment thresholds, but it also means kind of putting it in a wrapper that people understand. And that's kind of what our app does, what our website does, to try to use language that helps people understand what is actually impact investing and makes it almost an experience, impact investing. So when you enter our website, our app, we try to use very simple language, and we try to make every investment opportunity explained very well, and we try to almost emotionalize it a bit so that people care about impact. And I'm sure you guys all know these customers who care about impact, who want to invest into impact, they actually feel like, yeah, this is exactly what I want. And then also we try to make it accessible through channels that people generally hang out with. We try to use performance marketing. We try to use sales channels that makes that where we can access those people, we can explain to people in a way that they understand. That's an example from Innova. And I can also think of other examples in outside finance realm. And I think about, for instance, how I in CO2 offsetting. I just had an app called Klima. I don't get an affiliate bonus for saying that, but you can still check it out. That's the offsetting range. I know that there's a lot of other offsetting services, but it's just on my phone. I have a subscription I don't need to worry about. And so it made it very easy for me to actually do that.
So basically, a digital or digitization really is helping with Innova to engage more with the funds. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I would say to find people and then also to engage people and, let's say, help them understand what this impact investing thing actually is. Because that's really another thing to talk about really briefly. Impact investing is something many finance professionals know about. The vast majority of people out there doesn't. That they might actually care about, they might want it, but they don't even know what it is. So Innova is trying to bridge that gap, kind of infuse impact investing into the wide population and try to reach all those customers or potential customers for impact investing, but you might even fill out one.
So it's basically a movement of democratization of impact investing.
Yes, you can say.
Okay, that's beautiful. Let's switch to speaking about impact investing. So Gary, where do you see the biggest opportunities for technology to drive impact investing forward?
I think one of the most important factors, Eric has already mentioned, accessibility of information. I would also say first part of the demand, through digitalization and some of the newer technologies like blockchain, for example, can also help to reduce transaction costs, to automating a little bit more of the process, disintermediation, and therefore fractionalizing, for example, the investment tickets. And then on the other side, when we started, or when our foundation started, it was very much about those engagement on digital channels. For example, we got Edge Groups, Chinese wallet provider. They engage, for example, consumers, incentivizing them for behaviors like switching to public transport, then combining it with gamification or feedbacking, and somehow it resonated with people, and that was somehow the idea to saying that digital big fintech could be for so good. But then meanwhile, we have also gotten a little bit away from the consumer-facing end, and now look more at, for example, blue economy finance, and looking at how we can measure the impact, where also we set around exposure. There's shipping companies, container ships, ecosystems using satellite data, and therefore allowing it to be globally measure the movements of ships, aggregating that, meaning without digital technologies, the AI, that will hardly be possible. And so I think there's like infinite more possibilities at the moment. Of course, there's a large focus on the stoner reporting side, where digital makes it actually affordable. But then, of course, even more important are the channels that once you are invested, to make sure that money goes to the right into the right assets, and also it's be used for what it's supposed to be. So tracking constantly, real time, the impact that is on run to social, so maybe a little bit less developed yet.
liquid education. I was at my class and I got them. Not very. Okay. How did technology expand financial services also to underserved communities and make it more inclusive?
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. I will give maybe a couple of examples from Iris Plus. So let me first explain what Iris Plus is. Iris Plus is a set of guidelines and resources that is offered as a public good by the GEN that really supports impact investors to measure, manage, and optimize their impact. And our last impact day to be launched in Iris Plus was climate adaptation resilience course. I know it's a focus topic. It's a big topic. And so for that climate adaptation resilience thing, we identified a number of outcomes where we really want to, I think that's good, we can discuss that further for impact investors to think from an outcomes perspective. But one of the outcomes that are connected to this theme is increasing agricultural yield through resilient and adaptive technologies. And there, through our development process, we identified how a number of technologies, and I can go into some examples if that's helpful, with some specific companies, can really be supported to reach, especially smallholder farmers, and really support them in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of boosting their income potential. And yes, I'd love to talk about a couple of examples.
Yes, that helpful. Tools that you can mention.
Yes, okay, great. So I'll talk about two companies. These are illustrative examples that you can also find on Iris Plus and the website in the particular impact theme. So one is a company that's called Complete Farmer. It's a company in Ghana. In 2023, raised 10 million pre-Series A funding round across equity and also debt. And their main technology application is a digital marketing platform to help connect on the one hand side, and they have very much focus on sub-Saharan Africa to connect smallholder farmers directly with demand side. In doing so, they're also providing much better access to offtake agreements, which is fantastic for smallholder farmers because that means price transparency, it means more security around the sales of their products, which really helps, and that goes towards the outcome focus that really helps with limiting post-harvest loss and limiting spoilage, which we see is really happening at an increasing rate now with climate change. So that's one example, market-based platforms and technologies, but also they leverage as well satellite data to try and provide digital insights, advanced analytics for those smallholder farmers in order for them to meet the more exact, say, international standards for commodities. And this way supports them. And anecdotally, there is moving from needing to go through a middle institution, an intermediary, to be able, through this matchmaking technology, actually trying to kind of meet those international standards to go directly, which really helps to boost the net profit margin and the revenue account stability of these smallholder farmers. So currently they're working, I think, more than 8,000 farmers representing more than 30,000 acres. And in sub-Saharan Africa, that's a big, big deal because the agricultural sector accounts for, I think, around 23% of the GDP. And that productivity is really driven by smallholder farmers that represent around 60% of the population. I would like to mention one more example, if I have time. It's another company, Hula, that in 2021 raised 6 million in Series A funding, and their focus is on digital and agricultural insurance products, and they're targeting Pan-Africa as a market. So the technology that they utilize, especially, is machine learning and related applications in order to really scour huge, extensive data sets around weather patterns, historical agricultural yields, harvest loss instances, as well as, again, satellite data in order to avoid having to do on-site sampling, which is very costly, it's very time-consuming. it's also needed. It's done now, the need is reduced. And by leveraging these new data sets, extensive data sets and technologies, they're really able, or that's their aim in terms of that outcome perspective, their aim is to try to have a relevant product that's tailored for their client base, but also keep the insurance premium down, because that is so necessary for that local smallholder population. Currently have more than 2 billion West insured and have paid out more than 120 million to more than 1.3 million per month. Those are very impressive examples. Thank you for sharing me with that. I would like to continue also from agenda's perspective. You've already covered to the world does technology actually closing the financial gender gap and ensuring also more women benefit from financial services. So great. I think I would agree with what was said before. Technology is really an enabler. Also to reach more remote beneficiaries, more remote people in rural areas. So it's really, we have seen technology introduced already many years ago, so many use applications on the phone, payments are quite standard in many emerging markets with this. But more and more, we're also seeing some more complex use of technologies in some of the Fintechs to embed finance, for example. And also, we're investing in Pula. So we know Pula quite well the potential and this need for global insurance, especially. And if we speak about that, and we also, I'll just speak about one study that we launched already at the cloud 2 years ago. The strategy was really, with this focus in Latin America, we did a lot of research on what were the main barriers of why women were underserved. Because although you see more accounts, then if you look further, the women don't use the accounts, so they openly don't use it. And also, they might be served, but for example, if you look at SMEs in Latin America, they use microloans for working capital. They need, investment loans, longer term. So the needs are unmet. So we're trying to see, okay, where are the values? So we saw various on the supply side, on the product design, we saw various on the demand side, because women were also risk averse, perhaps intimidated to go and apply for a loan, and etc. So based on all of the findings, we developed a theory of change, and we found a strategy that has 3 key objectives. That's all of our investments need to sort of fit to be fully in the. So one was that the financial institutions that we found, they need to have a product that fits and is designed not to be gender unbiased, so develop the product but fits the needs of women. So that's all the products. And once you have the product, you force it to scale it. So we want to see more women using the product success. The second important point was the institutions themselves, because clearly also it starts as well with the diversity that you see at the institution. There are tons of studies of maybe to preach the converted fact that you need to have representation, and diversity to make a change. So now we also have experience of having discussions with so many financial institutions. We do see the difference. There are more perception, there's more understanding of, not having necessarily a group of people that don't understand the needs of one and developing products for them. That's why they pay. So it's important also to start these conversations and to have targets as well at the institution. But then the third pillar was on data, and that's maybe where also the technology comes in, because many of the barriers are, okay, where is the product and, it's not very well. It's because you don't have, for example, generally segregated data. And technology can be a huge helper here to then sort of be kind of support the other objectives. So based on this, we are seeing many of our partners, for example, developing these tools, education, financial education, that is also a topic. You see the apps for example, to cater better for many women. A couple of weeks ago, we were discussing these trainings offered to people on wine entrepreneurs in a company in Ecuador, and we're discussing open market. And so we were, okay, let's think deeper. So why are they not ending? And was it the training was designed for 48 hours. So it really matters for many of them. I mean, in Bolivia, I think this wife three clients are single mothers. I mean, who has time to attend to a training? I mean, it's just, these things that sometimes it seem obvious, but not to some people. So in the end, you have got this redesigning training program and also learning from them. I mean, there's huge demand on digital education. While also you need to also have the good channels to communicate this. You need hybrid approaches, which is also what we have seen with successful project partners. So that yes, digital is important, but there's still, if you look from a 1% lack of trust sometimes, how to use self-intimidation. Sometimes, okay, how does this work? So you need to invest a little bit more time in learning these things, and also, have this hybrid model where you can also have, non-officers go and check and provide the training.
Thank you very much for talking about how important education is, but I'd like to know about financial education, because some of those women who would need your help don't lack in financial education, or there are communities who lack in financial education. So how can digitalization enable those? If you can give a little comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you look at the partners, why or how can digitalization support more and more effective financial trainings? So first, you have the mobility issue. Especially in the micro SME, we could have some more barriers to go somewhere else. So if you have an app that will help and do a training online, that helps. Then also, I remember here I had experience in Pakistan, where they came to digitization, for example, helped them because it removed this male person coming to train you. This in some cultures is a problem. So you have, an app that will train, and then you remove these barriers. How the woman demand as a commitment where, you also need to take into account, social barriers that you have already norms that exist in these countries. So this is also another way to help, and again, I think it's also important that it's not just watching video. We also need to have the human connection on that. For women, also getting the video and then to check, data, the apps. So, but these can have a huge effect. We have seen as well women that have used these things. They tend to stick to these versions. So we also try to pass the message. This education also makes commercial sense because you have more customers. So just to try and embrace this, the ways also to target this sort of trainings to the one.
Thank you very much for the concrete examples. It sounds not so simple when you talk about it, but it's not so simple in real life. It really is like cheating.
Yeah, no, it is. I was discussing with the colleague that visited a client we have in Nigeria that is also using advanced technologies for zero fun. They actually they lens, but not with money, but with seeds, fertilizers. So we and herbs. And then they will collect at the end of the season after 6-8 months or so. So it's very much in the interest of the institution that these smallholder farmers are trained properly. So what they do, they use digital technology in a really clear way, or different from what we have seen before, because they have these apps that will tell, the officers, the competitive law the officer to the executives and working in this company to train them and to see, okay, now we need to visit, this area, and these are difficult rural areas. So very much needed and quite important for job creation, stability, and food security. So they go and they check and they say, okay, you need to depend on what stage you are of the season. They will give the right on training, so they will stand at the app, they just select their connection, their phones, and the app will know if they finish the routes, to make sure that they got the message, because it's really on the interest of the company that these people are trained. So I actually like it because it has this incentive quite well placed to train the beneficiaries. And in the end, for activity levels, as you mentioned before, have increased significantly. Thank you. I want to quickly move on to stable finance. Yes,
Yes. Because that's actually a super interesting topic. Because we confronted this quite a bit in Europe as well. We have a lot of women on our team, or roughly 50. And thank you very much. And the interesting thing is, probably because we are an impact investing startup or a scale-up. And the interesting thing is also in our customer base, we're roughly at 41% or 42% is the latest number of women, which is actually crazy high for an online investing platform. Usually it's around 30 or just 30%. So I think especially topic sustainability seems to pull women a bit more, because you can also do good. That seems to be something that is very... And the interesting thing is, I'm not sure who of you knows about this, but once women invest, they actually on average the better investors. There's studies on this, because they tend to be more trusting the expert assessment and not trying to optimize their portfolio all the time and reacting to all market efforts. That actually we've seen a share of women over the last few years in our customer base going up from 30-something percent to 41%, which links to that. And we're actually doing events and formats that are specifically targeted at women. And then again, digital technology allows us to find these people, because we can, for instance, run ads and then just say, okay, this ad leads our show to for an event that is then targeted on you. So there's a lot of potential there through digital technology to actually reach more women and close that and investing in.
That's very interesting. You wanted to add something? I have more examples. What are you usually? But it's a very relevant point.
Especially here.
Yes, absolutely. No, I would then like to pose a follow-up question when you speak about women-specific events. That's always some cheer and some judges. And so what are women-specific events for you?
We usually do we regularly do certain formats, informative events on impact investing, where we actually only invite women. And we have women from the team also attending these events and explaining our offering. And yes, some people might be not liking it, but we feel that there's a target group of women who actually feel more comfortable there. And so we run the events. And also feel they only attend based events, they can also do that. But we also have big events.
That's interesting, because we have seen an insight on the topic that you mentioned, where we have heard that some women, present women, explaining them they all focus, for example, financial education. But in other countries, we have seen the opposite. So I think it's very context related, and we also need to take this into account before we start something. So knowing where you work here is key, because these are slight modifications that can have a huge impact on the outcomes.
Absolutely.
Obviously, if there are any comments also in the audience for it that need immediate attention, please raise your voice. This is not a lecture, but it should be a live discussion. Obviously, we have also the Q&A later, but yeah, if a question or a comment is burning, please don't be shy and step forward. So if I may go back to sustainable finance and to Gerrit and Eric, how is digitization changing the way we invest in? You touched upon it in the introduction, and we manage renewable energy projects. I would like to quickly touch upon energy and energy transition. I would really appreciate if there are any inspiring examples that you can both share.
As part of our blue economy work, we also look at some into offshore wind. And offshore wind, meanwhile, making natural assumptions that as soon as it's like your renewable energy, you assume that it's much more sustainable in any regard. But it's also like a big intervention, like seabed. So there's, for example, now also significant investment in exploration of how you can reduce the impact. And I mean, for that, there's still like little understanding of how it interacts. Water is very different from terrestrial. So now they have also the first wind farms equipped with sensors, below water, above water, partly visual, and then trading all the different species. Also experimenting on the physical infrastructure, maybe different reach, and all of this needs to be monitored and analyzed. I think that's where there's a great application to make sustainable investment more sustainable, and not fix one out and create another one. It's the other examples, for example, also on making investment successful, also renewable energy investments. So look on how cities work in new projects. There's now also more and more exploration of, for example, how you can better structure community-owned assets. So partly also making investments accessible to low-income neighborhoods, where people can not buy a full solar panel, but by finding innovative ways how you can fund that, and then also share the ownership across communities. It becomes also like a first financial inclusion measure. It also usually leads to people taking better care of the infrastructure they have owned. And this is a participatory approach. And the other one is, for example, also that we're also looking to digital bonds. So where bonds traditionally have been usually like financial instruments that are issued in very big ticket sizes, like 500 million upwards. There's, for example, a lot of renewable energy projects now residential that is still finding. It's still billion scale, but very small individual lots. And so we're exploring ones, for example, would then factor in also like the baseline compares to what is afterwards, how the energy production and consumption changes, and so therefore making it more interesting to impact investors, and on the other side, and also for banks, fundable banks and impact investors for them smaller amounts. They can think of couple of 10 millions with you clustered, can aggregate better. I think that's where if you were just to pay lawyers to do this clustering, packaging, bundling, that would be completely unfit. So that's where hopefully like through digital with like some better scaling by scaling it actually down a little bit.
Thank you, Gary. Would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, maybe I can again give an example of family work on it. So as a bit of context, Nova has 3 different offerings. One is an investment solution where you can participate in stock markets investments. One is a Pillar 3A. And those two we impact mostly through active shareholdership. So essentially you invest and you hold the stocks, and we try to engage with the companies that you hold and try to make them work a bit better and a bit more sustainable. Now, the third thing that is pretty new is actually a result of the kind of crisis we faced in the last 3 years, where also sustainability, especially stock market investing, especially in 2022, 2023, people were a bit more cautious. So we thought, okay, what could be the next thing that we can innovate on? And we actually launched something that we call a Nova Grow, where we make project bonds mostly of renewable energy projects, but not exclusively of renewable energy projects available for anyone. So again, there's all about accessibility. There's cheap off. So you see a bunch of projects that you can invest in, and you can have an impact. And at the same time, through the bond, you earn an interest rate of, so usually between 5 and 8%. So again, these are projects that usually will not be accessible, especially in Switzerland. Bond investment here is for a retail market or affluent market, not such a big thing yet. And also this is, of course, moving capital that otherwise would probably not be mobilized for these projects. We actually, in the last 12 months or so, we managed to turn almost 10 million Swiss franc into these projects. And for many of them, we were already the first few months, so we had this launch, we were already the strongest distribution partner for these projects, and by market actually. So this is all until the otherwise would not be available for these projects. So that's, in our opinion, that's kind of the prime case for bringing impact investing, as you say, democratizing impact investing and bringing it to everybody out there who might feel like, yeah, I want to invest in these projects that we so far didn't even know that existed. But now that you say, I can have an impact and I can earn an interest rate, that's exactly what I was looking.
Yeah, thank you very much for that example. So it's reachable and doable for anybody.
That's right, yeah.
So even
almost
everybody to leave an impact, also on a smaller scale or on a scale that is possible.
Yes.
I would like to quickly touch upon the topic of data. I think it was mentioned by Veronica, and I would also like to pose my next question to you, Anna. How can technology help us to measure any impact and impact investing? And can you also share some examples where it really made a difference with regards to the data and you're available? And then show you also then we'll have a comment.
Yes, my pleasure. What a good question. And I think yes, technology can definitely play a role. But what we're kind of discussing impact to start with, that's about the lived experience. So that's what we try to drive at. And how we do that is through impact. The investment context, technology plays a role in the impact measurement and management practices that investors try to deploy and approach, and also in the investors, the corporates as well. What new technologies do they apply? What commercial applications they bring forward, and in the products and services. With regards to the impact measurement and management practices, there are two key areas where technology is really supportive. One is the data side, and I will speak about an example there, primarily around data collection. Then it's on the process, either on the analytics side, on the analytical data, but also the process that the organization uses to support the investment decision making through the investment lifecycle. And through those effects on data collection and also on analytics and process, it really helps strategy, which is really the motivational force around behind impact investing. So an example around data, in particular data collection and data analysis, I want to say that perhaps artificial intelligence, machine learning, gamification, they're probably the technologies that still very much in the exploration phase as far as data collection goes in the context of impact measurement and management. There is a lot of potential, for example, gamification. And I'm thinking here in particular with regards to survey data. There is a lot of potential there by engaging beneficiaries, users, to have real-time data, more data. But actually, there is a lot of research that still needs to happen as to, in what contexts, in what modes does those type of technologies make sense. And there is, I think, a real need still for a lot of guidance as to how to deploy those technologies in the context of survey data for impact data in a way that's also cognizant of some ethical dilemmas, some privacy issues we may discuss also later. Where, however, technology has really already made a very substantial progress with regards to collection and analysis of impact data from a survey perspective is with mobile enabled software. And there is that base of that is, of course, the huge expansion of mobile networks, of service providers, of also survey platforms that are available. I think now just 4% of the global population do not have access. If they had also affordability, if they had also the digital skills and were enabled, actually the population, 96% is living in areas where there is a mobile network. So that has really enabled surveys to be done through, for example, text or interactive voice response, which has led to much more data, especially on the social front as well, much more high frequency, sometimes time or near time data. This has helped to reduce the sampling bias, often with regards to data collection techniques, and also and very substantially lower costs significantly, but can be which can be then deployed in other programmatic areas or efforts, or just newer towards investments directly. There are some considerations as well as to the context that need to be taken into account. For example, using mobile-enabled software for survey data in the context of impact can be right in some contexts and less right in others, especially when you're looking, for example, more quantitative, more less sensitive topics that can be more easy. When you're looking at topics that perhaps are taboo in a specific context, maybe that you won't get actually the right response. You still need that personalization and that interaction. Obstacles that are still there for deploying these type of technologies more in the context of these data collection efforts are that even though it's just 4% of the population that don't have access theoretically to these networks, still I think over 40% don't actually effectively have access to mobile networks, and that's primarily not so much an infrastructure topic, but a topic around affordability and around digital skills. Which I think is a good example around data for impact measurement.
We also touch upon, and if there anything you want to add a comment to about how transparency is improved for the digitization.
Yeah, I mean, one key benefit is that you have access to many people in much higher frequency and very flexibly. So the potential there for having just much more data is very tangible. That leads to more transparency, to better reporting, but there are also issues around what is the transparency, how do you arrive at the transparency, and how do you also negotiate the transparency that comes through the data with what the individuals desire. And that requires a very careful negotiation of boundaries and governance processes, which also very much need to be in place.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, just that on the data side,
Yes.
I think we have on our strategies quite very little of detail on, let's say, outputs impact data. So we know, for example, the number of female women entrepreneurs in case settings. In terms of outcome data, for us, this is still quite expensive because it's still relying on these surveys done. And here's where I expect at least the next revolution in the potential for this digitalization to cut billions. If you have an app, you can be accessing all of these different services. I think also touching upon the transparency. I mean, what investors also want to see is to hear directly from the end beneficiaries. And now the knowledge crowd is, and you can also, if we got access to the app, just answer simple questions at the end. If you manage to grow your business, I mean, we can have several options, and we can hear directly from the people, and also to adapt and engage with the portfolio companies who use this data to produce better products. We are now really trying to do something. I mean, also asking our investees to report to us, for example, delinquency data, with forcing them to collect this data. But and these sort of incentives sort of abuse is not. And here is really the next revolution for us also, single investors. We struggle so much. Also to communicate and to attract more and reach transparency for and the medium, the coverages we are making, and to sell the story that as well as what I mentioned before. I think this is where we want to hear from the apps directly in a happy state that is aggregated. I think this is the next thing. Thank you, Veronica. Okay. We want to prove.
When you just a very short comment, because the thing also is wanting to hear from the end user is of course also like the more it's B2C or like micro finance, it's a scalability challenge. Probably the economics are quite challenging, and so we also like trust. I mean, is money arriving where it should be? And I think it's also probably still some room for some authentication or certification of results. I mean, that's where from whether it's IoT sensors, whether it's like simple snapshots of an outcome can already be then machine analyzed, where before there were like organizations maybe trying to innovate about which communities they involved, but in the end it was always like humans, which always leads to costs, it leads to delay of the process. I think that's what whereas the economy scales so to also maximize the money that is actually used for the end and not for the process getting in there.
So we're slowly coming to the end. I have my last question, so you can get ready for the Q&A. So my closing question. So technology comes not only with positive sides, also with challenges, right? And let's address energy use and waste. Thinking about large data centers, for example, how can we ensure, like you said, opening one hole or closing one hole and opening another? That was a very nice example. How can we ensure that digitalization supports sustainability rather than creating new problems? Want to start?
But, yes, I think out of it is also maybe not like rocket science, so it's also but I mean, maybe investing some of the efficiency gains also in actually lower use of resources, not increasing the performance and like what you throw into the engine each time the engine breathes. And then the other thing was also about with decreasing costs for processing, increasing quality of the models. It feels almost like very tempting to not care about what you put in or how much you put in. But I think that's also where there's still some that smartness to be put in, like how you develop models, how much data they actually work with this. That's also like an optimum. So when we work on Fintechs, so on machine learning models, it was also soon become clear that after a certain number of, let's say, clients that we analyzed, the incremental value that we had from like pouring more client data, which didn't increase so much. And I think this kind of very, common sense for, just pouring in more doesn't mean that you will have much more better results. I think it needs to probably be applied to and extend that up for that use case. If I really use AI to produce more cat videos, or whether you use
What?
cat videos.
Videos.
Oh, and now that everyone gets that personalized bedtime story, maybe desirable, but maybe also not necessarily needed. And I think there's probably like more sense making and quality assurance, and maybe also coming up with more creative questions for AI. How to simplify the life, how to declutter it. So I think that sustainability will come a few ends.
Thank you, Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will. Pretty agree. I would say, I was touching up on the sort of fintech space and data security, say, would be one. Would also help see stuff much.
Compared to
Once they have these apps installed in many of these countries, they can access and track where you go, what apps you are using. This is data that perhaps can be used for a good cause because they can infer from something the credit history that without this you might not have. And this would use it. So interest rates, but speak also with abuse, honestly, because I usually reject. I mean, these things, the apps are installed, but it's linked to the responsibility, the security of this data, and the education on how we're informing people, where this is happening with phones. So all of these sort of responsible practices that we also need to be glad for. For us, when we, for example, connect investments in a fintech company in India, we also, it's not perhaps assessing this technology, how can we make sure that are comfortable. These are data security, so we hired consultants, for example, so I think these things are important for knowledge, and we have to speak now. We are much better when we work in school, but you're still learning the basis webcast. Thank you, Veronica.
Yeah, well, I can say that I think with every, it's a case by case question, right? As with every case, you need to consider, or what is that? When you are called the handprint, look at companies in the stock market and we evaluate their sustainability. So we call the handprint is what the company does or produces. For instance, company like Vestas produces wind turbines. And the other is the footprint, is how does the company actually do business? And you just need to consider both. You cannot just say this company has a great handprint, so just some investing. You also need to consider how they actually do business. The good counter example probably is Tesla, which does electric cars, but actually through its own history has had a problem with corporate governance and certain ethical issues. So actually they have been blacklists for quite some time already because of that. And you just need to consider those things. And then we also try to consider our own footprint. We pay public transport tickets for our employees. When business travel, usually you try to avoid flights. So all these things are important, and you need to consider both. You cannot just say this is a sustainability case, so it's all good. You need to make sure that footprint is also there.
Very holistic approach. Thank you. And I can only add to what has been said, maybe that technology, just picking up maybe your other points, is an innovation is, how I see it, is not an end, it's a means. So one possible framing to try and be strategic around what technology you're investing, what application you're investing, is again trying to consider what is that you're trying to move from an outcomes perspective. If you're an impact investor, what is the issue that you're trying to solve for? What specifically the measurable outcome that you're trying to move? Maybe going back to the example from the adaptation and resilience, impacting RS Plus and the specific outcome around increasing agricultural yield through adaptive and resilient technologies, and impact investors that use what we call core metric sets in RS Plus, which is basically a set of metrics and indicators that are adapted and curated specifically to try and help investors assess impact performance versus that particular outcome. Would be guided initially to try and consider what is the climate vulnerability status of the markets that are relevant for them, of the markets that are relevant for their industries, then to identify and be aware of the relevant technologies that are being applied to drive towards that positive outcome, and as well as looking at deployment of those technologies, really also assess adoption, assess relevant education initiatives to ensure that, is adoption happening and is in a way that was the idea, actually, for having that connection, that impact pathway towards the outcome. And through that sort of strategic and structured consideration, that also may place impact investors in a good stead to try and consider also the potential trade-offs and see how can they mitigate those and be or engage with them consciously.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I will.
Yep.
It's over the microphone.
So it's very nice, very interesting discussion. My question goes in the direction of, because you touched on the energy, I'm just wondering, ChatGPT and artificial intelligence has been sold to us like it's the solution to a lot of the world problems in the future. I just wonder with the footprint, I read somewhere that ChatGPT search requires 10 times the energy that you would have on a normal Google search. So are we able to reconcile these new technologies and, be sure that they're still climate friendly or sustainable? I don't know what your view is.
10 times sounds considered more.
Yeah.
So I think both AI, also cryptocurrency or blockchain before, have come at the cost of massive energy expenditure. That for some reason seems to be the trajectory of humankind, just to consume ever more energy. And we will need to see whether we can keep up with the development of renewable technologies. But at the moment, there's just a massive energy use. I don't think it's going to go away. This technology is there. So the energy, which works, but the US is actually planning to add gigawatts of energy just to fuel the AI. China's keeping their plan up, the nuclear plan, because they're also expecting energy to go up. The AI data centers. So my expectation is there's going to be a massive increase in consumption. And we need to see whether the energy transition will keep up to this. I guess in the short term, it will be more traditional energy sources. Energy can keep up with these things. But it's definitely from an energy point of view, it's
I just wonder if the benefits they promise us that this will have will,
Can you repeat it otherwise?
I wonder if something it keeps me sometimes thinking whether the benefits that the artificial intelligence will bring to the world, will not have the negative side on the energy side could be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody needs to decide what the benefit of this. It's just another technology that can be used for anything. And the problem is not going to stop. So I'm not quite sure if the question is actually one it needs to be answered, but for sure, the energy expenditure is there. What we use technology for, it can be anything. It can be cat videos. So I guess if there's just some new cat videos, then most people would say, well, it's not particularly good use of this. There might be better uses of this technology. Yeah.
And then probably also the price will probably fix some of the excesses. Because at the moment, because they want to promote their services, that's somehow cross-subsidized, but it was energy to fully priced in, meaning that the one keyword that's only 10 times, but the search result would be valuable enough that any user in whichever way pay price for it. And I think once that is being also passed on, is true. I think that might also solve itself. The question would be more how long will it last and how much damage will be done to it.
So, I mean, this technology is there, and I think it's going to use a lot more to do.
It's yes.
You think
I have one question more on the kind of measurement side. That's with that also that educational offerings that Roy had and yesterday you were mentioning. In terms of having it digital, does that make it easier for you to adapt these when you maybe realize at the end of the reporting period that you want to add additional questions to the survey, or when you realize that the education that you're offering maybe is not so effective? How does that benefit or create additional challenges in the pitch time? Where's that from? Okay, she says, I mean, on technology and on some strategy, we're also testing different data providers. I would say for now, it's still different, and again, we're still trying to find the best for us. So we see a lot of data providers that will help you, gather the data with confidence and to aggregate all of these at, portfolio level. Then this is another set of tools. And also then maybe distribute and convert all of it into a report, for example.
Right.
It's another tool. So it's I think we're still sort of waiting as well to see sort of better offering of these. You have shown this flexibility point that for us is very, very easy. In fact, because we can make changes, not that we change in the manual, but sometimes you tweak a question and it makes a big difference as outcome. So we do need this flexibility, and this is a part that sometimes for now, we struggle. But I think technology should come to allow us for this, Also now we gather the data, but for example, to interpret things, we are still relying on real things or on salaries. So yeah, it would be really great to start them. Now I want to see, this already can happen and show me his different relation, how put it. So just to have a lot more personally to blame this data. We do it, but it takes us a lot of time because we're using, tools that I'm sure, a ChatGPT type would be much faster and more effective at it. No? So this is something that I think it's still for our wishes, I would say, to be more efficient, to spend that time, like, in your tackling like.
Good.
Yes, I think flexibility is definitely, flexibility is enabled by technology, especially in the case of, let's say, conducting surveys. Then in terms of reporting and running production tasks, I think it's also interesting to have an eye on what is the use, what is the purpose of the data use, and what is you want to communicate to who, or is it used for the investment decision making and allocation of capital for engagement? Is this for reporting, for which audience? And their needs such as aggregation, such as consolidation for reporting may become more prominent. But it's also important to note that flexibility maybe also has limits, and Brian can touch upon that. And it's important to kind of have in mind that we lose some degrees of nuance as we go away from what a particular data point analytic is telling us for a specific setting, and we aggregate, generalize. That nuance is somehow lost. There's still a value to that for a given use case and audience, but I think I don't expect that bridge to ever kind of collapse, and we can see exactly the same level of nuance and information comes through and diversified portfolio level across geographies and across sectors that we can understand when we really hone in. So I think it's good to kind of help level set the expectation. And then one more thought I had is that it can also be helpful for the practitioner to also reflect and, as is important, on what does the evidence tell us, what does the research tell us, to be guided in regards to what type of data is helpful for which purpose in which setting. I think there is where I see another quite significant opportunity of digitalization and technology to, on the one hand, by increasing the volume, frequency, and sometimes also quality and accuracy of data and the processing power of that, to really kind of feed that into, for example, life cycle assessments, feed into type of research that helps us to make much more concrete what the impact pathways and what type of impact pathways do we really have confidence in, and then go with bigger amount of trust towards investors and also with more confidence in our own or the industry's investment allocation decisions as an important potential for technology and digitalization. That building the evidence base and also the business case for investing. Thank you. I think we are. One more question? More comments? It's a deep add to the discussion that has been already had. Thank you all for sharing your insights. And I'm Jainan, and at one point or other in my career, I've worn most of your hats, maybe not quite a different, but I started at the capital markets and I just finished up in conservation or conservation organization. So I think just to comment on the question, to add to what your insights before regarding from the gender perspective and the opportunity of technology. I think there's a lot that's being considered. I think from my experiences of the work that I touched upon, if you're also talking about globally, really across the entire globe, there are a lot of women who actually before they're getting apps and financial literacy, who are actually undocumented. They're indigenous, rightful citizens of the countries in which they live. We have a lot of people that don't have IDs, which means they don't have access to healthcare, to actually the financial system. You have a lot of women, for example, in the Philippines here, we have a lot of women who create great service to society. They do the jobs that actually are not paid for. It's actually an advantage for the economy, which is, basic, they clean a lot, but they're not paid. So they're not actually officially part of the economic system of the countries. And that's also, a big opportunity for technology to actually change that and have them as parts of, they're not undocumented, they're not walking around not anonymous, and they can actually be more active. They're active participants, but they're not recognized participants, if you will. The other aspect, I think, with regards to measurement, and I think that the lady before the question about all our use of technology and how that's an energy drain, and I've come as well. I've been in the tech sphere. I actually built something that was akin to an Innova, but well done to you guys for carrying the flag. This is a very important thing. But when sometimes that's just more, and sometimes when technology, as you said, is an enabler. But when we're looking, and I think we're talking both about, when we're talking about portfolios, we're talking about sometimes in the context of companies that are listed, that are already kind of up and running and are known to most of us. But we're also talking sometimes the portfolios are, as kind of looked at, we're talking about small farmers, bank, I think you also touched on SMEs. So that's a different type of data set, and it's Angela, you touched on the important question of who are we collecting the data for what purpose. But it's also what are we trying to measure, and therefore that's the impact. And we don't necessarily need the technology to do that. It's really setting the right KPIs in order to understand what is the impact that we are trying to achieve with the agriculture project, through the renewable energy project. What are the tangible, what does success look like? And what are the markers of that success? I don't think digitalize those results, but in order to collect that, you don't necessarily need that. Sometimes, yes, it does help. I know in my prior work in conservation space, there's a lot of digital solutions, which are very, very helpful in that, especially when it comes to land and looking at deforested land and agricultural land and the history of that. It's very, very important. Sometimes it's just very simple on what are you trying to measure, and what are the markers for that. But thank you for the discussion.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I will take this beautiful comment as a final remark. Thank you allow me. I'm mindful of the time and we're way over time. Thank you very much for your patience. Well, Cecile will slowly make her way over. I will maybe just summarize a little bit the sharing. So utilization technology has a lot of advantages and it really can help us, but it needs to be used and deployed in a mindful way, right? The WEF has a report that says that the digitalization of digital technologies can save up to 50% by 2030 of the greenhouse gas emissions. So that's very promising if that is really achieved. But still, I would like to point out, coming from Women in Sustainable Finance, the concerns I have with data and bias data in particular. The data that we have and that is used is not neutral, and it can reinforce bias and discrimination. And let's speak about lending to women, for example, right? And so that's something that I really want to point out, that it needs to be looked at and it needs to be handled very mindfully already now and not later, because then we have the same problem as we have, right? Having said that, I hope that this conversation is only igniting further discussions. We are way over time, which I think is a beautiful sign, but we have a beautiful buffet out there. Cecile will welcome you just now, but before Cecile comes over, let's give applause to our panelists.
And it's really an honor, Cecile. I think you have one or two announcements. Maybe
Can I also say?
yes, of course.
Thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to say that everybody in this room, if you are interested in checking out a yoga, everybody gets a welcome gift. Everybody's already a customer, also gets a little welcome gift. So just email our support, say you attended the event, and they will revert right back.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And maybe Monica or Chiara, can you press the arrow because we have 3 more slides that need to be clicked. So Cecily can come to the front. Yes, you need a whispering ball. Sure. Well, then, if you're not thank you so much for coming, and I'm just going to quickly tell you about your website. On the 19th of June, we'll have our Impact Investor Day here in Zurich. So it's a half-day event where we discuss the different type of strategy and products that Workit is offering to advance sustainability and financial inclusion. And then we also, on the 25th of September, organize our Workit Filter Media, where this is where very Gal is touching upon the fact that it's very important for people to then about incline and really go on the ground and realize what a difference it makes and what is really impact on the ground. So this is a way also to showcase this. So just very briefly, and I'm happy to have you here. Please stay afterwards to also have a drink and discuss with each other. You can also ask all your questions you've not been able to the panelists. But thank you so much. Okay, 2 more slides. I would also like to take the time to invite you to our upcoming event, which is From Capital to Impact Private Equity's Role in Sustainable Finance. It will be at our Kleckhaus at Hirtle, near Bahnhofstrasse, and you're obviously all invited to come. For those who don't know, next slide, please. We are an association. We finance ourselves through memberships. So if you would like to participate in our activities, please sign up. I would like to say thank you. Exactly. I would like to say thank you on behalf of Women in Sustainable Finance to Cecile and Bo Orchard for hosting us here today. It's our second time we are having a co-event. I would like to thank our 2 photographers, Samantha and Annemarie, who are also part of the Women in Sustainable Finance. Then Andreas and Rafal, who are watching the dog and filming at the same time.